In this video, we're gonna talk about the Fast and Furious 4 movie that is released in 2009. We will discuss the movie story, summarize plot, and explore the cast and characters. We will review the movie and provide personal reactions. Let's begin from the movie reviews. Fourth in the series of these car films, Fast and Furious redeems the cast of the first film for an adventure that is sadly not as exciting as the original movie was. This film offers little to those seeking a smart action experience. It is a best cheesy B movie with a few genuinely enjoyable moments and say 2 of out 5 for Fast and Furious. Here's a piece of advice: go watch the movie on DVD all over again, it's so much more fun. So Diesel explode exploit once again after having room off into enormity of the last 8 years. The alluring speed devil Dominic Toretto, played by Vin Diesel, who became a cult figure in the first Fast and Furious, turned his back to the two sequels that followed, Too Fast, Too Furious and Tokyo Drift. Due to fee problems, the franchise lost its sync and Vin almost vanished from the screen. So, naturally, the two had to get together again and create greased lightning once more. Fast and Furious 4 2009 movie review. At a time when there are sequels, prequels, remakes, reboots, and reimaginings, Fast and Furious managed the hardest of movie type, the soft reboot. Fast and Furious is not a reboot or remake, it starts again with a brand new jumping on pad for anyone not familiar with the films, while actually accepting and embracing everything which has happened in this franchise so far. It is clear and effective, if not exactly the most imaginative of movies. It was clear that this movie was a calibration between the strongest aspect of the Fast and Furious franchise. The studio wanted Vin Diesel back to add some credibility to the failing series, and Vin Diesel wanted to return but only if they change what the series was. So gone is the idea of street racing and in comes the new story of drug trafficking and revenge. To its credit, it is actually a better story. The film actually relies on the chemistry of the two leads. Not many movie franchises could pull it off, but Vin Diesel's Dominic Toretto is an interesting character, constantly on the wrong side of the law and trying to clear his name. He is more of a legend than a man, and Diesel plays him so naturally. Add to this partner in crime in the form of Paul Walker's Brian O'Connor, who is unlike previous installments has actually started to act. Here he feels like more of a well-rounded character when he has done previously, and shared history between the central character helps. Whether it wanted to become one or not, Fast and Furious is a buddy cop movie, two clashing style, a mutual respect but not quite trust, and plenty of times when the pair bail each other out. It has taken a few years to manage it, but Walker and Diesel have a chemistry on screen that works effectively. It is also just enough to keep you interested in a pedestrian story. Racing has gone and drug running is in. There is still a hint of undercover and deception to keep it firmly in the original movie's route, but this is a film with a definitive villain rather than being about fast cars and beautiful women. Although Gal Gadot managed to fill that role well. That doesn't make the plot anything special though. It is predictable, fairly humdrum, and holds little of any surprise. It doesn't help that there is a secret villain who is anything but, which also removes any manic or threat you may feel toward the two central heroes. It even locks some of the thrills from the previous installment. The Fast and Furious franchise began to pride itself on big set piece, but this movie lacks anything that really touches what has come before. The opening has a sequence which echoes the first movie with a cool stunt involving a rolling truck, and there is thrilling chase through a mountain tunnel which does a good job of reflecting the speed the cars are moving, but it would be fair to expect more from the fan car franchise. The film does have a singular success thought, and that is revitalizing and reinventing the franchise. As soft reboots go, this is a clear moment when the series takes a different turn and it is a movie which effectively starts almost a new franchise. The tantalizing and shows that the studio and Vin Diesel have big plans for the series going forward. Overall, Fast and Furious will not surprise anyone with the story, action, or set pieces, but if the aim of the film is to jumpstart a franchise and begin fresh, then this is where the success lies. A lesson is how to perform a soft reboot. Fast and Furious 4. The synopsis of the movie is Vin Diesel and Paul Walker re-team of the ultimate chapter of the franchise built on speed, fast and furious. New model, original parts, heading back to the streets where it all began. They rejoin Michelle Rodriguez and Jordana Brewster to blast muscle, Turner and execute car across Los Angeles and froze through the Mexican desert in the new high octane action thriller. When a crime brings them back to LA, fugitive ex-con Dom Toretto reignite the feud with Agent Brian O'Connor, but as they are forced to confront a shared enemy, Dom and Brian must give it to an unstained new trust if they hope to outmaneuver him. And from Conway Heights to precision tunnel crowns across international lines, two men will find the best way to get revenge, push the limits of what's possible behind the wheel. The movie cast is Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, Michelle Rodriguez, Jordana Brewster, Song Kang, John Ortiz, Les Alonso, Gail Gadot. The movie is directed by Justin Lin. Movie runtime is 107 minutes. Original title is Fast and Furious 4. Screenwriter Chris Morgan. Music by Brian Taylor. Cinematography by Amir M. Mockery. Producer Universal Pictures and One Race Films. Fast and Furious movie review. If ever there was a film franchise perfectly positioned for a modern video game adaptation, it's a Fast and Furious. For a medium so regularly adept at putting us in high speed pursuits and shoving us through sweeping action sequence, it's almost baffling that is nearly 2 decades this series has ever spawned a truly top-notch dedicated tie-in at least beyond 2015 small but free Fast and Furious themed spin-off experience for Forza Horizon 2. Unfortunately, it still has not. Fast and Furious Crossroads is short, shallow, and surprisingly simple, and it's nothing less than a crushing disappointment in virtual very department. The Fast and Furious film saga rise from low fee point break rehash to $6 billion box office brute in the ban of film snobs, but I love it. A high octane high poach of spy movies and madness and telenovela tropes, these films may be dumber than a box of higher, but they have orders of heart, and I am ironically and univocally invested in them. I have got all the Blu-rays, I have got me more of the Hot Wheels than my wife knows about. I assure you, I am all in. I'm telling you this because I need you to know I'm not punching down here. In fact, I was nearly punching the air when Crossroad was finally confirmed after years of rumors. A Fast and Furious games from the talented team behind Need for Speed Shift and Project Cars, and Vin Diesel is involved. On paper, that is a supremely promising combo, but somehow all of that promise resulted in this bland and buffingly pacing game that Blu-rays lost 4 hours, and that including the car scenes. Not that I especially wanted to keep playing longer than that. Crossroads pits the Fast family against an ancient group of highway robbers who is since transitions to international terrorism. The tentacle, the sound entirely on brand of a modern Fast and Furious tale, and for the most part, it works well enough. The vehicle selection is wrong, with many buckle tractor from the films, although the ones with harpoon guns and gaming routers bolted to their ropes can look a little goofy. Things don't get off to a particularly promising start, tug, and with the opening mission dropping you directly into the action without any introduction. The overly manufactured VO here between franchise Sulvar's Dome and Letty feels like a jury rigged solution for court process. Mr. Nobody being off the table for a proper intro, it's like walking into a 10-minute late. Fast and Furious 2009 revisit Vin Diesel and Paul Walker reunited. This episode of Revisit is after two sequels apart, the Fast and Furious family is reunited in the fourth film. Paul Walker, Vin Diesel, Michelle Rodriguez, and Jordana Brewster, the gang's all here, and yes, they are racing cars once again. But this time, the stakes are life or death. We are going back to 2009 to talk about Fast and Furious. Universal tried something different with the third film in the Fast and Furious franchise. Rather than make it a direct follow up to the previous films, they brought in new characters, teenagers they thought would be more appealing to the youth market. They got a decent movie out of it, but not a lot of payoff. Tokyo Drift made substantially less than its predecessors at the box office, and the moment that had viewers buzzing was the last minute cameo from Vin Diesel. After opting out of Too Fast, Too Furious, the Fast and the Furious star graced Tokyo Drift with his presence for a few seconds and opened the door to the sequel fans really wanted to see. The return of the original cast, the reunion of Diesel and Fast 1 and 2 Fast star Paul Walker. Universal was going back to the series route with the fourth film, but they also brought back the Tokyo Drift creative team. Justin Lin would return to direct the fourth movie from a script by Chris Morgan. Morgan's original idea of Tokyo Drift had centered on Diesel's character Dominic Toretto. He would have been the one learning to drift in Tokyo and would have been investigating a murder at the same time. The idea of Tom solving a murder case carries over to the script Morgan wrote for Part 4 and decided to make it a very personal case. At the end of the Fast and the Furious, LAPD officer Brian O'Connor, played by Walker, helped criminal street racer Dom get away from the police. They had abandoned during Brian's time undercover in the street racing world. Brian had even gotten romantically involved with Dom's sister Mia, played by Jordana Brewster. A post-credit scene showed that Dom had made it to Mexico. The fourth film, which drops the definite article from the title and is simple called Fast and Furious, continuing the trends of crazy title that started with Too Fast Too Furious, catches up with Dom 8 years later. He and his girlfriend Letty Ortiz, played by Michelle Rodriguez, have made their way to the Dominican Republic. There they have teamed up with locals Liu and Santos, played by Tigo and Don Omar, to pull off a gasoline heist, and Dom has called in his pal Han to help. Played by Song Kang, Han has the breakout character in Tokyo Drift. Test audience always scored him as their favorite character, and Lin had an infinity for him because Kong was basically reprising a role he had played in Lin's indie movie Better Luck Tomorrow. So the decision was made to bring Han back for a crook appearances in Fast and Furious, even though he had died in Tokyo Drift. During his cameo in that film, Dom had mentioned that he and Han used to ride together, that they considered each other to be family. So Fast and Furious became a prequel that gives us a glimpse of their time together. Since audience kept responding so well to Han and Lin kept coming back to direct sequels, the character would return for more movies after this, pushing Tokyo Drift further and further down the timeline. But Han exists Fast and Furious right after the gasoline heist. Dom knows authorities are closing in on him, so he part ways with Letty. He manages off to Panama, and soon he is informed that Letty returned to Los Angeles and was murdered. So he risks his own safety and freedom to go to LA and find out what happened. The filmmaker had originally planned to reintroduce Brian O'Connor with a scene set in a prison. Presumably, this would have been a fake out. Brian was an outlaw himself in Too Fast, Too Furious, facing jail time for letting Dom go. So, if Fast and Furious started by showing him in prison, viewers would have thought he had finally been locked up, even though the events of Too Fast, Too Furious were meant to clear his record. But in this film, we learn that Brian has been recruited by the FBI. He is now Agent Brian O'Connor, and therefore would have just been undercover in prison to get information. Lin planned for the very first shot of Paul Walker in this movie to be of him behind bars, shirtless. Then he realized that things probably would not go so well for someone who looked like Walker if they were in a lockup. The week before they were going to shoot that scene, Lin decided to completely rework Brian's reintroduction. Instead of being in prison, he is chasing down a suspect in a frantic foot chase, a bumper for anyone who was hoping to see Walker shirtless. But a more exciting choice for an action movie. Brian is working to bring down a drug cartel run by a mysterious man named Braga. Braga has been smuggling heroin into the United States from Mexico for a decade. The FBI knows that street chasers are recruited to do the smuggling, but they don't know exactly how the operation works. Dom's investigation of Letty murder is also leading him toward Braga, so he crosses paths with Brian in the process. They end up having to work together again, and late in the running time, Dom learns that Brian has been keeping secret again. Letty was involved with Braga's heroin smuggling because of Brian. She made a deal with the FBI they would clear Dom's record if she helped bring Braga to justice. As the film nears its conclusion, Brian tries to set up the same deal for Dom himself. Vin Diesel was not involved with Too Fast, Too Furious because he did not like the idea of the Fast and Furious getting a sequel. He has also said that the script he saw that would have featured Dom was not good. A couple years later, he also chose not to return for the 3X sequel. So getting him to come back for Fast and Furious was an accomplishment, and Universal sweetened the deal by letting him produce the film with franchise producer Neil H. Mortis. They also let him direct a 20-minute short called Los Bandos, which shows Dom and his cohorts preparing for the gasoline heist. And he got to take one of the cars home as a souvenir. While developing the film, Lin worked hard to make sure all of the returning stars were satisfied, which was not always easy. So he has said that it was like building a road while the car is still driving on it. On his audio commentary, he talked about the conversation that really sealed the deal with Diesel. They were discussing the script when Diesel asked him what the film was really about. The theme of it, Lin said, it's been very interesting because of these kind of fast cars and hot chicks films. The theme that's been driving these films is family. The exploration of what it means to have this non-traditional family. I thought the scene for the film should be sacrifice and what that means for Dom. As soon as I mentioned sacrifice to win, it's clicked. I guess it was not a hard sale because basically you are saying when you get to be Jesus Christ, and I think he took that well. Lin inherited the main stars of Fast and Furious from the original film. He then built a supporting cast around them. John Otis was cast as Roman Campos, who is presented as being the right hand man to Braga. But there's a more going on with him than meets the eye. Les Alonso plays Phoenix, who lead the drivers hired to smuggle Braga's truck that executes them before they reach the States, which is why he killed Daddy. Jack Conley plays Penning, Brian's boss at the FBI. She Wisdom is static, a colleague Brian doesn't get along with. Lisa Lapira plays FBI agent Sophie Tinch, a more helpful colleague. In the mix at Braga's organization is Gil Gadot as Gizel Yeshar, who is strongly attracted to Dom, but he doesn't hook up with her because she is mooring Letty. Fast and Furious was Gadot's first film, and acting was not something she had intended to do. The Israeli native had done modeling work and served the military 2 years in the Israel Defense Forces. Then she was attending law school when the casting director for the James Bond film Quantum of Solace saw her modeling card. Gadot took the Bond meeting but was straightforward with the acting director. She told them she was not an actress and didn't want to waste their time. So she was not cast in the Bond movie. It was not until after that brush with the film world that she started taking acting classes and audition for projects. The same casting person she had met for Quantum of Solace was also working on Fast and Furious. That's how she was cast as Giesel and stated down the path to become Wonder Woman. Some involved with Fast and Furious consider this film to be the real sequel, coming after two entries where the franchise got sidetracked. It brings the original start back together and commits the idea that the series is about family. So it sounds like this should be a fun party, but the film is surprisingly downbeat. Easily the most door entry in the entire franchise. Maybe it was not such a good idea to make a reunion with a revenge tale. Everyone serious, angry, and sad. Characters are too busy mourning Letty and feeling betrayed by Brian to have a good time, and that makes the movie less entertaining than the preceding three. Jordana Brewster was upset that she was left out of Too Fast, Too Furious, yet the movie that brought her back to the franchise is her least favorite of the one she is in. Speaking with Collider, she said, Fast and Furious is very grey. It's set in LA, Paul is in a suit, I am in this red dress and I have bangs and I am just very sad and pissed off at him. I just feel like I don't remember that one super fondly. She also questioned her performance as Mia in the film, saying, I was kind of prissy in 4 and then back to really knowing that I want in 5. It's really important to me that Mia's very centered and grounded and I lost sight of that in 4, but I also was a reintroduction to everyone. Although the movie is melancholy, it does have plenty of action in the mix, and in these action sequences you can see the first sign of how over the top the franchise would get. The opening gasoline heist is the biggest action scene these movies had yet, and ends with Dominic driving a car under a burning tanker that's rolling and launching down the road. timing it perfectly so he can drive thoroughly unscratched with plenty of digital enhancement helping him out. The smuggler gets Braga's heroine into the States by driving through tunnels. Sequences set in these tunnels are not visually appealing and require a lot more digital enhancement. But that's where the climax chase happens. It's one of the least engaging sequences in the early films. At this point in the franchise, people can get injured when their car smashed into something. Letty is in a bad spot when Phoenix makes her crash her car. Brian is very banged up at the end, but we also get a preview of Dom's superhuman abilities when he gets shot in the shoulder and doesn't seem to mind very much. There are plenty of problems with Fast and Furious, but as far as car chased action movie go, it's not bad, just underwhelming. There are some good character moments. It's nice to see Brian, Tom, and Mia interacting again, and it's a very satisfying. And when we see Brian and Tom work together to dispatch Phoenix, the man who killed Letty, even the later sequel would tell us that Letty was not really killed. Universal had been planning to give Fast and Furious a June release, the same as they had done for the previous three movies. But late in the process, they decided to pull the release forward 2 months. It moved from June 12 to April 3rd. Due to this change in plans, composer Brian Taylor had to speed up his process. He went from having a couple months to record the orchestral score to having just 3 days to do it. The 107-minute movie required 72 minutes of music, so Taylor gathered his orchestra and recorded 25 minutes of music each day for 3 days. The musical time crunch is not evident in the finished film. The release date shift didn't hurt the film at the box office either. You had think a summer release would have been better. The teen these movies were aimed at were out of school and plenty of free time in the summer. But even though they were still in school in April, they obviously found the time to go see Fast and Furious. So did the older audience who had been there when the franchise started 8 years earlier and viewers who skipped Tokyo Drift come back to see this one. Fast and Furious became the most successful film in the franchise up to this point. It draw it over 155 million at the domestic box office, passing the record of 144.5 that was held by the first film. The international box office added more than 204 million, leaving Too Fast, Too Furious International Haul of 109 million in the dust. At the end of its theatrical run, the film had earned more than 359 million on a budget of 85, guaranteeing that there would be another sequel. Paul Walker was instantly on board to come back for Part 5. Interviewed by the New York Times in the build up to the release of Fast and Furious, he said Universal was already talking that we are going to make a fifth one in Europe. But there was a bit of deja vu here. Walker had experience being in a successful film with Diesel, then having his co star refuse to return for a sequel. He told the New York Times, I'm sure Vin's going to be busy. When they asked Diesel about it, he would not promise that he'd come back for part 5. He simply said, you know, my process is script first. Of course, Diesel did end up coming back for part 5 and every sequel since then, but 5 did not take Brian and Dom to Europe like Walker here it would. They would get there eventually, but first they had to go on detour to South America. Fast 5, the most popular of all the sequel, is set in Brazil, and we are going to talk about that one in the next episode of Revisited. Fast and Furious movie review. Start your engines again for the fourth sequel in the Fast and the Furious franchise. This time around the track we get the original cast reprising their roles in a new story. I was an extreme skeptic about this film, but it actually does well with the cars and the Action. The film begins with Letty killed in a car accident during a sports truck run. Dom comes out of hiding in Panama and returns to Los Angeles to find the true cause of her death. Meanwhile, Brian Paul Walker is superheading an FBI investigation to arrest a heroin dealer who uses cars to move drugs across the US Mexico border. Brian and Dom find themselves in a competition to win the race that will decide the driver to replace Letty in the drug run. This is a very good action film. If all you want extreme car chases, explosions, and violence, then this is well for the price of admission. Director Justin Lin does a great job cranking up a franchise on its fourth leg. He tones down the CGI racing of the last film and brings back the bone crushing metal of street racing. Lin also ratchets up the body count. There are more gunfights and fisticuffs in this film than the first three combined. I cannot help but think Vin Diesel has seen this action numbers fade and wanted to come back with a hard hitting film. The biggest surprise this time around is the Paul Walker doesn't suck. I thought he was terrible in the first two and expecting a repeat performance here. He plays Brian as an older, darker character. He is tough as nail and has one scene in particular that had our incredibly genuine theater audience hooting with glee. It's difficult to add any dimension to a poorly written character in general, so Walker gets some respect for not bringing back his past creepiness. Fast and Furious is an apparently misogynistic film. The women are poorly object and scantily clad eye candy and nothing else. Michelle Rodriguez is barely in the film, and Jordana Brewster, who is also back as Tom's sister, may have been better if she had not spoken at all. I doubt feminists are the target audience. I cannot imagine women, unless they are car racing enthusiasts and would have any interest in seeing this film. Fast and Furious did a much better cliffhanger ending, and the Fast and Furious movie 2009, that is the fourth installment in the series. The movie is directed by Justin Lin, produced by Michelle Queiroz, Vin Diesel, written by Chris Morgan, starring Paul Walker, Vin Diesel, Michelle Rodriguez, Jordana Brewster, John Ortiz, Lars Alonso. Music by Brian Taylor. Cinematography by Amir Morki, edited by Christian Wagner, Fred Ruskin, audio by Original Film, Relatively Media, and One Race Films. Fast and Furious, also known as Fast and Furious 4, is a 2009 American street racing film directed by Justin Lin and written by Chris Morgan. It is the fourth installment of the Fast and Furious franchise. The film starred Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, Michelle Rodriguez, Jordana Brewster, and John Ortiz. The film serves as a connection from the first film into a present-day setting, the main number of the original cast reprising their role. The film is chronologically set after the second installment, Too Fast, Too Furious, and set before the third installment, The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, originally released on April 3, 2009. Fast and Furious movie plot. Still on the run from the law, Dominic Toretto, Vin Diesel, and his crew, consisting of girlfriend Letty, Tigolio, Richo Santos, Cara, and Han, are hijacking fuel tankers in the Dominican Republic. After the latest heist, Han informs Don that the police are on the trail, making him decide to disband the crew and leave. Letty behind to protect them all from being caught. Month later, in Panama City, Dom gets a call from his sister, Mia, played by Jordana Brewster, who tells him Letty has been killed in a car crash. Dom heads to Los Angeles to attend his funeral and finds traces of nitromethane at the crash site. He coerces the local mechanic into giving the name of the buyer, David Park, and is informed that the only car that uses nitromethane is the area is a green 1972 Ford Toretto Sport. Meanwhile, FBI agent Brian O'Connor, played by Paul Walker, is trying to track down a Mexican drug lord, Arturo Braga, whose identity to the public is unknown. His search also lead him to Park. Dom arrives at Spark's apartment and hands him off the window by his ankle before Brian arrives. Brian saves Spark, who in return becomes the FBI new informant and gets Brian into a street race. Brian selects a modified 2002 Nissan Skyline GTR R34 from the impound lot. Dom also shows up in his 1970 Corvette Coville's SS. Roman Compass, Braga's second in command, and Giselle Yashar, Gail Gadot, Brala's illusion reveal that the winner will become the last driver on a team that traffics heroin between the Mexico-United States border. Dom wins by punging Brian's car while in Nitro, making him lose control. Brian uses his power as an FBI agent to unscrew the driver. Dwight Muellers and takes his place on the team. The team meets up with Braga's henchman, Phoenix, and Dom notice that Phoenix drives the same Torino that mechanic described. They drive across the border using tunnels to avoid detection. Dom confronts Phoenix and learns that he kills the driver after their work is done, and that he killed Letty when she tried to escape him. A standoff ensues as Dominic detonates his car with a nitrous to distract Braga's men, and Brian hijacks a 1999 Hummer H1 with 60 million worth of heroin in it. Brian and Dom drive back to LA and hide the heroin in a police impound lot, where they pick up a modified 2008 Subaru Impreza VRX STI hatchback. They drive to Dom's house and reunite with Mia. Dom attacks Brian when he learns that he was the last person in contact with Letty. Brian explained that he was working undercover, tracking Braga in exchange for clearing Dominic's record. Brian tells his superior that in exchange for Dominic's pardon, he will lure Braga into a trap, forcing him to show up to exchange money for the heroin. At the drop site, the man who claims to be Braga is revealed as a decoy and composes the real Braga. Escape with Phoenix to Mexico. In the ensuing chaos, Phoenix nearly runs over Giselle before Dom saves her. The field trap results in Brian being taken off active duty. With Giselle's help, Brian and Dom travel to Mexico to catch Braga in the Sibero and Dom's rebuilt 1970 Dodge Charger RT and apprehend him at a church. As Braga's henchmen try to rescue him, Brian and Dom drive through the tunnels back to the United States. Brian is chased by Phoenix ahead of the other until he is T-boned and pushed out of the tunnels before Phoenix can kill him. Dom drives out of the tunnels and into Phoenix, killing him as police and helicopter approach the crash site on the American side of the border. Brian tells Dom to leave, but Dom says he is tired of running. Despite Brian's request of clemency, the judge sentences Dom to 25 years to life. Brian resigns from the FBI and Dom boards a prison bus that will transport him to Lompoc Penitentiary. As the bus drives down the road, Brian, Mia, Leo, and Santos arrive in their cars to intercept it. Cast: Paul Walker as Brian O'Connor, Vin Diesel as Dominic Toretto, Michelle Rodriguez as Letty Ortiz, Jordana Brewster as Mia Toretto, John Ortiz as Arturo Braga, Gal Gadot as Giselle Yashar, Laz Alonso as Phoenix Carden. The central cast is rounded by the Song Kong as Han Solo, Dominic's right-hand man, while Puerto Rican singers Diego Colodon and Dom Omar feature as Leo and Santos respectively, member of the Oil House team. Fast and Furious receives mixed reviews from professional critics. The film is rated at 28% based on 173 reviews collected on the Rotten Tomatoes website and 45 on Metacritic based on 27 reviews. Roger Ebert, who gave positive review to the previous films, gave an unfavorable review of the film, writing that I admire the craft involved, but the movie leaves me profoundly indifferent. After three earlier movies in the series which have been transmuted into video games, why do we need a fourth one? Oh, I just answered my own question. Abbott noted the story, dialogue, and acting as perfectionary. The film received negative reviews upon release but was a box office success, grossing 363 million worldwide and spawned three sequels: Fast 5, Fast and Furious 6, Furious 7, and Till Fast X. And the next movie, Fast X Part 2, is in development that will be released in 2025. Fast, Furious, and celebrating recklessness and agreement. Fast and Furious is exactly and precisely what you had expect. Nothing more, unfortunately. You get your car that are fast and your character that are furious. You should. They would know how to make these movies by now. Producer Neil Mortis is on his fourth and director Justin Lin on his second. Vin Diesel and other major actors are back from the Fast and Furious 2001. All they left behind were two definite articles. This is an exactly made action film, by which I mean the special effects are good and the acting is extremely basic. The screenplay rotates these nouns through various assortments of dialogue: race, driver, nettermaid, sister, FBI, border, dead Mexico, murder, prison, traffic violation, tunnel, muscle car, import, Plymouth, funeral, helicopter, Toretto, 10 seconds, Corona, and cocaine. The plot: Dominic Toretto, Vin Diesel have been in the Dominican Republic for the last 6 years, but now returned to the United States where he is a wanted man. Probably charges vehicular homicide, murder, smuggling, dating an FBI agent's sister. A reason for return: Lady, the girl he loves, has been killed. After Toretto arrest all those years ago, he was allowed to escape by FBI agent Brian O'Connor. O'Connor's back, this time on a task force to track down Dom and also the leader of a drug cartel. This provides a scaffolding on which to hang the body of the movie, which involves a series of chase scene, fights, explosion, and women who would like to make themselves available to Toretto. To no avail, he is single-minded. The pre-title chase scene is pretty amazing. Toretto and his group team up in four racing vehicles to pursue a truck hauling not one, not two, not three, but four enormous tanks of gasoline. Their method: Toretto drives close behind the fourth tank, guard climb out of sunroof, stands on hood, leaps to ladder on back of tank, climbs on top, runs to front of tank, leaps down, uncouple tank from third one. The reason the guard does this while Toretto drives is, I guess, well, you know what they say about women drivers. Ever see a truck hauling for enormous gas containers? I have not. On a narrow mountain road with a sudden steep incline around a nerve, where it narrows to one lane, not me. Why are they going to this trouble so their buddies can have free gas for a street race that night in Los Angeles? I say let them buy their own damn gas. The race is down city streets with ordinary traffic on them when the wrong way on an expressway. Not a cop inside where they are the TV news chopper when you want them. This would get huge ratings. I do know I admire the craft involved, but the movie leaves me profoundly indifferent. After three earlier movies in the series which have been transmuted into video games, why do we need a fourth one? Oh, I just answered my question. Fast and Furious movie review. Fast and Furious reunited the stars of the first installment in the high-octane franchise: Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, Jordana Brewster, Michelle Rodriguez, in a sequel directed by the Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift Justin Lin. The story finds Federal Agent O'Connor tracking down a drug dealer whose operation involved the use of street racer to find his narcotics across the border from Mexico into the USA. Murder that's tied to Brian's ongoing case reunite him with his fugitive ex-pal Dom Toretto, as well as his ex-flame and Dom's sister Mia, both of whom still harbor anger and pain over their betrayal by undercover cop Brian at the end of the first film. Brian and Dom must set aside their past differences if they are to take down their mutual enemy. Ultimately, both men are out for revenge, and it's a quest that will take them back behind the wheels of some of the hottest hard rods around. Unrated character actor John Ortiz, American Gangster, Alien vs. Predator, the other work of his co-star as composed the mysterious narco trafficker's top man. Fast and Furious is the most dramatically solid entry in the franchise. Although it's not insulting to say that no one goes to see a Fast and Furious film expecting high bro drama or Oscar worthy performance, the fact that this sequel is set almost a decade after the first film and reunite its two main stars lend Fast and Furious a bit more maturity than the series has been known for. The actors are that little bit older, seasons and what vary, all of which makes the betterness between Brian and Dom as well as between Brian and Mia that more interesting and dynamic. Again, human drama is not the reason why people are interested in seeing Fast and Furious, although it may make for a nice surprise when they do. No, this series is all about high octane escapism, fast cars, and hot women judged by this criteria. Fast and Furious largely delivers the goods, and the opening gas tanker heist sequence set on a windy mountain road, along with a pair of sequences featuring precision tunnel cross across international line, prove that there is still some life and eventiness left in the franchise. Indeed, the least interesting set piece is the required street chase through Los Angeles, which has turned to death by the point in the series. Overall, Fast and Furious is a dumb fun that would make for a good night out for 16-year-old boys and 36-year-old men who still want to behave like adolescents. It's arguably the best installment in the Fast and Furious franchise, but that also means it might be the right time to finally park this series in long-term storage. Fast and Furious movie with the lowest Rotten Tomato score actually saved the franchise. Fast and Furious lowest rated movie on Rotten Tomatoes is also the one that saved the franchise after two box office failure that almost killed it forever. The Fast and Furious movies have changed drastically since the first installment, with the saga trying different approaches until it finally achieved the blockbuster status it has today. From stealing DVDs to preventing nuclear war, Dominic Draco family has gone through a lot throughout 10 films, and a spin-off, Fast and X, may have gotten mixed reviews, but it was not the worst received Fast and Furious movie. Despite Fast X box office disappointment, the Fast and Furious franchise has been regularly releasing financial hit for over a decade, given how massive the IP has become. It can be easy to forget that the series struggled quite a lot during its first installment, following a strong first film that introduced audience to Brian O'Connor and Dominic Toretto. Fast and Furious took a while to find its identity after a couple of missteps. Tokyo Drift director Justin Lin returned for the fourth installment, whose biggest selling point was the return of the franchise's original protagonist. Fast and Furious 2009 has a 28% score on Rotten Tomatoes. Fast and Furious 2009 or Fast and Furious 4 is the lowest rated Fast saga movie on Rotten Tomatoes with a 28% critic scores. The film, which marked the return of Vin Diesel and Paul Walker to the franchise after the former skipped Too Fast, Too Furious and the latter skipped Tokyo Drift, was supposed to bring the saga back to its roots and reignite the IP. Although bringing back Diesel and Walker did help Fast and Furious from a financial standpoint, the story left to be a desired. Fast and Furious 4 was deemed too repetitive and uninspired. Fast X Rotten Tomato score 56%. F9 The Fast Saga is 59%. Fast and Furious Present Hobbs and Shaw 67%. The Fate of the Furious 67%. Furious 7 81%. Fast and Furious 6 71%. Fast 5 78%. Fast and Furious 4 28%. The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, the Rotten Tomato scores are 37%. Too Fast, Too Furious 37%. The Fast and the Furious, the first movie is 54%. Critics pointed out how Fast and Furious 4 was almost a remake of the first movie, this time with both Brian and Toretto having to infiltrate an organization tied to street racing. It might be noted that previous Fast and Furious films had not been critically acclaimed either, particularly Too Fast, Too Furious and Tokyo Drift. Still, Fast and Furious 2009 did not bring much else to the table other than the returns of Brian and Toretto. Letty's off-screen death did not land as well as it could have, and the investigation regarding Braga was not that interesting. Why Fast and Furious 2009 was so important to the franchise? Despite its flaws, Fast and Furious 2009 is arguably the most important entry in the saga since the first movie. Had it not been for Fast and Furious 5, the Fast saga as audience saw it today would not exist. Justin Lin had done something very different from the first two movies in Tokyo Drift, and while the third film has its charm and aged quite well, Fast and Furious indeed its original stars back, but Too Fast, Too Furious and Tokyo Drift had proven that creating new main character was not going to work in the long term. Fast and Furious 4 plays out like a direct sequel to the Fast and the Furious, almost as if the other two movies had not happened. Audience learned what Toretto had been doing since the end of the first film, including through a short film directed by Vin Diesel called Land Burners. That said, the film did not completely ignore its predecessors. Brand's previous adventure is acknowledged, and Song Kang-ho makes a cameo as part of a Dominic Draco cruise. In addition to Brian and Toretto, Fast and Furious 4 also brought back Letty and Mia. The fact that the Fast and the Furious main cast returned for the fourth movie is not the only reason why Fast and Furious helped save the franchise. The film was the first entry in the Fast saga to show that the series could be more than just cars and street racing. The cars and the races were still there, but the search for Braga is what set the tone for the story. From Toretto holding a man by his leg to an action-packed third act, Fast and Furious foreshadowed the saga's future. Fast 5 could not happen without Fast and Furious 4. Fast 5 is widely considered not only the best Fast and Furious movie, but also the franchise's most important installment. And for good reason. Fast 5 was a critical and commercial success, grossing over 600 and 206 million on a 125 million budget. 626 million. Set mostly in Rio de Janeiro. Fast 5 was the first entry in the Fast saga to have a 9-figure budget, and it did not disappoint. The movie greatly expanded the scope and the scale of the franchise by not only bringing Dom's family to another country for a global adventure, but also combining characters from previous films. Fast and Furious 4's box office sent a message that audiences were still open for more Fast and Furious movies. Recent Fast and Furious movies had railed a lot on the sagas assemble with Fast X cast in particular featuring multiple stars. Fast 5 budget was a clear indication that the studio was willing to bid on the franchise potential, which would not have happened had just Fast and Furious 2009 not rescued the IP. Even though the fourth movie was not well received by critics, it still grossed 359 million on 85 million budget. Fast and Furious 4's box office sent a message that audience still open for more Fast and Furious movies. Fast and Furious 4 is when the Fast saga began to change. Fast 5 is often pointed out that the movie where Fast and Furious changed forever. However, this change in tone and skill arguably started in Fast and Furious 4. The 2009 film was one of the transition, recapturing some of the tone of the first film while also incorporating a more action-packed approach. For example, Toretto starts to become a superhero in Fast and Furious 4. Once a regular human who was also a great driver, Dom could now catch an engine with one hand and interrogate people as if he were Batman. The Fast and the Furious were a car drama as much as it was about street racing, but Fast and Furious 2009 took things to the next level. Braga street racing circuit and the drivers the hires are just a small part of the story, which focuses more on Brian and Dom acting as secret agent as they try to take down a crime lord. Fast and Furious 2009 was the first indication that Fast and Furious would soon no longer be just about cars. As flawed as the movie was, Fast and Furious 4 impact on the franchise cannot be overlooked. The movie is directed by Justin Lin and released in 2 April 2009. The runtime is 107 minutes. When a mutual friend is suddenly murdered by a Los Angeles drug cartel FBI agent Brian O'Connor, played by Paul Walker, and outlaw boy racer Dominic Toretto, Vin Diesel separately infiltrate the shady organization in search of revenge, Justin and Screeching Hand. If 80s redux prequel like Die Hard 4 and Rambo are the movie star equivalent of powered-free retirement benders, this follow up to a recent action franchise put stars Paul Walker, who was in the Fast and the Furious and Too Fast, Too Furious, and Vin Diesel, who set out the first sequel but cameoed in the Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, in the position of 30 years old guys who bust up their lives and have to move back in with their moms. Since showing promise in 2001 when the original was a surprise hit, Diesel has gone from contending to play via 3x and the pacifier while even the most dedicated fact fan might need to check with the IMDb to name any Paul Walker credit beyond his 8th billing in Flanks of Our Fathers into the Below 8 Below. Obviously, both leads need a jolt of career knocks to stay out of the DVD dungeon, and rules for tough, interesting women being as scarce now as in 2001. The Woolly Wonderful and Attorney sideline, Michelle Rodriguez and Jordana Brewster are back in the Harshness too, along with a macro bit of Song Kong who starred in Tokyo Drift to tie together the series' sprawling over story. The mix is as before superstar illegal drivers strutting with babes hanging off with arms just in case you thought there was anything well about their twin obsession with highly unattractive muscle cars and each other. The clunking plot finds old friends Bran and Dom competing to get close to a mystery mobster who apparently need fast drivers but as it happens doesn't really. Even with stars on cruise mode coming to life only when they get to top the old annoying sporting character, this would have worked if only it delivered the series money shot scene, fantastic car stunt chases and pile up, but in contrast with the cricket of the first movie, computers have taken over a multi-car patrol tanker raid that serves as prologue, release too much on CGI to augment the stunt work, and the One big race sequence finds the outlaw drivers taking order from a set now. If I were a DVD, she had fast and forward to the chases. When Dom is out to murder Phoenix, Brian hopes to catch Braga alive, who is wanted in several cases. How do you meet these ends? By racing like speed demons and fighting like invincible superheroes. Dom races like a fearless fighter and gets into Braga's team. Brian feels for his sister Mia and adds some passionate romance to the tale. When Dom comes to know about if he gets furious. The chase are a trademark of the Fast and the Furious series, and in the addition, the scenes are amazing, involving helicopters, SWAT, and the FBI agents. Camera work is awesome, which is so vital in action movies. The 106-minute flick is a shade longer, and some more trimming could have helped as the time the stars themselves board. Justin Lin is smart in keeping the romance in the background and all the furious action in the foreground. Love is a subplot in the movie and the bone-breaking stunt that keep the movie on the move. The cast does well, but Vin Diesel and Paul Walker have grown older by 8 years since the last flick, and the shades of this aging it fit in the movie. Overall, the Fast and Furious 4 just stick to the gender but fails to live up to the expectation of the great racing series. The Fast and Furious 2004, Letty gets murdered by drug traffickers, so Dom and Brian decide to take down the drug traffickers from the inside. They arrest Braga, but the FBI arrests Dom for all his past crimes. He gets sentenced to 25 years to life, but on the transport bus to the prison, Brian and the two Mexican guys from the beginning and Dom's sister Mia pull up behind to break him out. During the first tunnel sequence, all the cars travel very far into the mountain, turn lots of corners, yet not only in Giesel but able to speak to them over the radio. Still, GPS still works. GPS signals invariably need a clear sight of the sky and can penetrate light cover, but more certainly not the depth and cover. The famous quote is Brian O'Connor, "This is where my justification ends," Dominic Taco, "and this is where mine begin." Trivia: at the start of filming Fast and the Furious, Jordana Brewster did not have her driving license. Are they completely ignoring the events of the second movie? I was given the impression that Brian and Roman were going to open a garage together with the money they took from Carter. Plus, Brian was on the out with the FBI, yet in the movie, he is suddenly an FBI agent. No, it doesn't ignore Too Fast, Too Furious. Brian even referenced in a couple of times in that movie. Brian was promised a clean slate if he helped them out, which presumably gives him the option to rejoin a law enforcement agency. That he chose not to open a garage with Roman is pretty much redundant. Brian simply got a better offer, as he said it in the Fast and Furious with his conversation with Mia. "I am a good lawyer." Fast and Furious 2009 movie review. And The Furious was a weak action film that broadly plagiarized Theron Bigelow's Point Break by simply replacing Surfboard with Cars and Patrick Swayze with Vin Diesel. It was a moderate hit back in 2001, and its success led to an even less accomplished sequel, Too Fast, Too Furious. That film kept co-star Paul Walker but lost Diesel. The third film, The Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, pretty much lost everything bar the basic concepts of illegal street racing. That's the point at which I trapped out and left the franchise to do its things without me. Then I started hearing genuinely surprising things about the subsequent movies, that the unexpected fourth film that reunited Walker and Diesel was actually pretty good, and that from the fifth film onwards it had somehow metaphors into one of Hollywood's most entertaining action franchise. Given the fairly lackluster experience of the first three films, I was never in a particular hurry to find out if this buzz was accurate. But with the runaway box office performance of Fast and Furious 7, I finally decided to rate the previous three films and check out them for myself. Jump forward to 2021, and I have, of course, drunk and noodle-ated and watched the last two Fast movies in the cinema. Fast and Furious picks up some years after car racing bandit Dominic Toretto, Vin Diesel, and FBI agent Brian O'Connor lost cross paths. They meet again in Los Angeles as each investigates the same powerful drug kingpin. For O'Connor, it's the culmination of a long term investigation. For Toretto, it's a mission for revenge after one of the kingpin's associate murdered Toretto's girlfriend Letty, a surprisingly underutilized Michelle Rodriguez. Fast and foremost, it's worth nothing. The Fast and Furious is easily the best of the Fast 4 F&F movies. It has a better, slightly more original screenplay and more interesting action and better dialogue. Its cast has also developed, particularly Paul Walker, who has actually matured by this point into a reasonably engaging leading man. Vin Diesel remains, broadly speaking, Vin Diesel a highly effective action star with a photogenic quality and a rumbling voice only whales can hear. The plot cleverly reunites its leads in a believable and measured fashion and gives each of them strong, untrustable motivations throughout. It even managed to include a couple of interesting, albeit not entirely unexpected plot twists as it goes. What's odd is how unengaging the car chases are compared to the rest of the film. High speed street racing is pretty much the franchise, a reason that yet here they feel more than a little too functionary and tiresome. The film itself is pretty enjoyable, but whenever it casts jump into their cars, my level of interest drops considerably. This is particularly the case with two lengthy chase sequences through a series of mining tunnels that has happened once is okay. It's a sequence overrun it on CGI and a little bit silly, but it's interesting enough to get away with it. But then during the climax we return to the same tunnels for a very similar sequence. It's oddly rounded. The film ends in an interesting place where a strong setup for future sequels. I finished each of the earlier films generally bored and a little unimpressed. I finished the one rather keen to find out what happened next is a surprising and welcome turnaround for the franchise's fourth installment. Fast and Furious 2009 movie is reunited Vin Diesel and Paul Walker as an outlaw and an FBI agent infiltrating a drug gang. The name is Braga to avenge against the for murdering his girlfriend. As Brian O'Connor, Walker is trying to find out the identity of the mysterious drug lord behind the gang. Despite Dom's differences with Brian, who dated Dom's sister in the past, Dom decided the right thing to do is help Brian bring the drug lord to justice. What follows is a high octane crime thriller with a couple surprising twists along the way. Fast and Furious is the biggest of the movies in this franchise, including the original. It delivers spectacle thrillers, a dramatic storyline, and some good acting. The movie contains strong moral elements and even overt Christian reference. These positive elements are tempered, however, by plenty of foul language, several party scenes showing women, and unresolved elements of rebellion and lawlessness. Moviegoers should exercise extreme caution. This is not a movie for children. For reviews of more expectable movie, so here is the movie scene. Very strong, somewhat mixed pagan underworld with strong Christian moral element, but with pagan sentiment, lawless at times we are rebellion. The movie, The Fast and the Furious, there is an agreement characterization of Vin Diesel as the good and bad Tom who keeps you guessing about his ethics till the very end. So get your knees out. Good movie to watch. Storyline of the franchise gets better. in the movie, and you are left to think what is coming next. The Fast and the Furious movie, the new star that come in the franchise is Giesel. So the review of the movie is: while most car racing video games can boast a plot more complex, Fast and Furious provide an ample amount of entertainment for those who find supercharged cars, secretly clad women, and illegal street racing action enjoyable. There is not much competition in this racing subgenre. The fourth installment in the franchise stars successful blind instant stunts with unlawful revenge, some dark humor, and a handful of clever references for audience familiar with previous entries. Paul Walker tries hard to be cool, and Vin Diesel utilizes best Badass impressions, and for the most part, they pull it off. Now, if only those CG cars were a little more convincing, taking place between Too Fast, Too Furious, and Tokyo Drift. Fast and Furious finds Dominic Toretto and his crew of drivers currently hijacking oil truck in the Dominican Republic. Fearing the repercussions for his friends and his lover Letty, upon his inevitable capture by the police, Dom leaves for Panama. But when tragedy strikes, the driver finds himself back in Los Angeles, where he must team up with former rival Brian O'Connor to take down the operation of elusive drug lord Arturo Braga. One is on the mission of revenge and the other seeks redemption. Both men will learn the value of loyalty, the price of vengeance, and the necessity for a code of honor that goes beyond the limits of the law. The terribly Christian's Fast and Furious lives up to its name during the opening moments, even before the title flashes on screen. Every character is introduced with a chase scene, and the first 5 minutes of footage delivers multiple gratuitous clavish shots. This is all followed by drastically unrealistic action, super iconic cars, and PG 13 looking in its attempt to fulfill the stereotypical macho man's every fancy Fast and Furious forget to tell a story and ironically doesn't have enough car chases. Obviously, when it comes to this type of extreme escapism, the story doesn't really matter, but the gross discrete of physics, momentum, and gravity occasionally start the intelligence of the audience. Regardless of how many of these films they have seen, incidentally, with so many movies to the franchise, street racing is particularly its own genre, of which this is sadly the best. While Fast and Furious is the fourth part in the series, I might as well have been a direct sequel to the first film, bringing back more returning character than the second film could assemble. It's stunning to see the length the filmmaker will go to make speed and fresco from the unnatural dialogue to the horribly contrived stunts. As the plot morally serves to connect one action sequence to the next street race scheme to catch villain, another street race, Dom's uncanny mental crimes in recreation, and other assorted CSI skills, Mia's unlikely handiwork with a bullet wound, and the races themselves are make death race and pod racing appears possibly or frequently too much to let aside. By the end of it all, two things are dangerously apparent: breaking the law is the only way to have fun, and revenge smuggling always leads to street racing, who know drugs could lead to nickel driving. The Fast and the Furious movie for 2009. The tagline could not be more true of this movie, as big a hit the Exit one was. The second and third part of this franchise failed to create equally big ripple due to the absence of Vin Diesel. The poor performance of Diox and Troyes mean that Vin is back for the fourth one. After all, the original is the original. Diesel powered baby, the BDS does not stand for bad as no. Fast and Furious 4 completely ignore part 2 and 3. The story picks up from where part 1 left off. FBI mode Paul Walker allows Vin to run away, hiding from the cops. Vin is running his operations in Dominican Republic. Again, an odd place cause Vin's name in the movie is Dominic. Plot of the movie has gangsters, drugs, cops, And Cars, the original team of Paul Walker, FBI agent Diesel, Dominic Draco, Jordana Brewster, Vin Diesel's sister, and Paul's girlfriend, Michelle Rodriguez, Vin Diesel's girlfriend, are back for this rocking movie. Vin still drives muscle car and Walker stick to driving imports. The chicks are good eye candy and they even get behind the wheel once in time. The best of them is Michelle, cause she is the only one who gets dirty under the hood and also handles herself quite well everywhere else, on top of the car and even on the backside of a truck. While the plot is quite interesting, it is the car chases that kinda get a bit repetitive. Jeff said it. The best thing about the Exit movie was the execute car racing that was shown on the screen. When it comes down to that, part 1 certainly comes out on tops among all four movies. The car sequence in 4 would have worked as the movie cameo out of the time part 2 was released. The main car chase sequence in part 4 feels very game-like and it had a Tokyo Drift like feel to it. Remember the race on the mountain. This is where the story comes in handy and prevents the story from being turned as a dude. The plot combined with the chemistry that's carried forward from the original between Walker, Vin, and Jordana is what held my interest in the movie. Look it, load it, and pop it, that's done right. For me, the initial underlying crush was over after the first two car race sequence, and the rest of the sequence has a game like feel to them, bad lighting, too much dust and dirt being kicked off to give them the benefit. The sequence was pictured in a desert, but still it didn't do it for me. Perhaps it's because part 1 and part 4 I have watched other movies that have comes out with better car sequence. Death Proof, top 10 best car chases ever, chicks doing the chasing for the odds to the peel. Or perhaps I was taught from a long night and the darkness of the theater was too tempting for my body to resist. All being said, I was a good movie, certainly worth a watch, but not worth cancelling dinner plan with your date. Thankfully, the friend I went with preferred this movie over a mundane dinner, just one reason why we get along just fine. The rating is 2.5 out of 5 for plain moviegoers, 3 out of 5 for people who like movies that give them an underlying crush, 3.5 for fans of the franchise. I like the exit sequence the most. Vin and Michelle are robbing an oil truck train. The sequence was picturized in daylight so the viewer can see the scene a little more clearly and it's easy to follow the fast action on screen. The street race was good and exciting, but the GPS voice was very annoying. I get enough of that in real life. Movies are supposed to allow me to escape from that. The tunnel sequence was the most bizarre of the three main race sequences. It gave the mountain race sequence of Tokyo Drift a run for its money of being fake. I felt I was including poorly for the sake of a movie-based video game that might come out in future. Love the exchange between Gail Gadot and Vin Diesel. She tries to hit on him and he shons her. The lines might be cheesy but appears to be trailer made for Vin's delivery and he delivers them just right. Vin's car totally rocked. Paul's car sucks toward the end of the movie. Black and white, seriously, did the design run out of idea or was it the budget? A bit in the latter with the economy thinking. Vin Diesel and Paul Walker, Fast and Furious 4. A series that provided a successful, moderately enjoyable right up to now blows its tires, gasket and transmission on its way to flaming out in Fast and Furious, trying to refill the franchise tank by bringing back the 4-star of the 2001 original. The producer forget to get a script for shooting, resulting in a picture that will hollow posturing and indiscriminate action cut in incoherent quantum of solace fashion. These deficiencies may not matter that much at the PO where the Furious film have continued to prosper, particularly internationally, but this is far by the weakest entry of the four. Hard to believe, but it's been 8 years since Vin Diesel and Paul Walker stepped in for their first made car race through the LA streets. Physically, the years have been kind to them as well as to female co-stars Michelle Rodriguez and Jordana Brewster career-wise. It's been erratic for them all, but that still doesn't prevent the two men from looking like the oldest guys at the nocturnal street parties where the gaudy cars and chicks gather to watch the drivers outspeed the cops. The dynamic of every aspect of the script by Chris Morgan, the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift won't suffer from having been played out anywhere from 1 to 1000 times too many. Mosho guys marketing their charity and drawing lines in the sand, law enforcement bosses branding a lost canon operative, drug lord turning on the dime from charming to lethal, dumped girls, bitterness craving to renewed physical desire, outlaw types living by cowboy codes of honor, justice, and revenge. As Brian explains to Mia, the one thing I learned from Dom is that nothing really matters unless you have a code. If there's an original scene in the film, it's subliminal. The street racing is visualized as much by GPS devices, accompanied by automated vocal direction and computer effect as by the real internal combustion deal, and not one but two crazy chases take place in a tunnel connection the US and Mexico that provides all the photographic possibilities of a goofer hole. And the film has not already self-destructed in everyone's mind by this time. It definitely does in the ludicrous exchange between the good guys and bad guys in a farmhouse, a scene that makes no nonsense on any level. Without the cultural aspect of Tokyo Drift to distract from an indifferent story, director Justin Lin is stuck trying to salvage an old heap that's well past its friendly expression. Time for everyone to move on. Dom learns his girlfriend Letty has been murdered. There's a lot happening right there around the 12% mark. Dom leaves Letty to protect her. Brian appears for the first time as he is discovering information about a man who supplies cars to the Braga drug cartel. And then Dom gets a call from his sister Mia about Letty's death. All these scenes happen once right after the other. Boom boom. The Lady Death is really the inciting events because it's what begins the story's main conflict about Dom's quest for revenge. Dom and Brian meet at a suspect house and learn they are both after Braga. Although they learn important information about Braga here, the main event in this comparatively small plot point is the awaited reunion between the main characters. It's played out in a relatively low-key way that doesn't make for the senpaist of first plot point but which does not work out well within the story. This works the end of the normal world of Tom and Brian working independently for each other. From this point on, their storylines will be interconnected. First pinch point. Dom and Brian meets Braga's second in command and other henchmen in the organization. The nucleus here are the introduction of the antagonists themselves. Along with some information about Braga, the movie then follows up the relatively low-key scene with a fully flagged action scene in which Dom and Brian race to try to gain sports in the Braga organization. Dom and Brian go on their first mission for Braga. Revelation are relatively spare here, although Dom did previously learn that latest killer is the henchman named Phoenix. In action movie, the midpoint is almost always going to be an action extravaganza with the important plot changing revelation sideline to either period to or after the big scene. However, it's always nice when the revelation can actually figure into the scene itself. Dom blows up cards in an attempt to kill Phoenix and gets himself shot in the process. He and Brian steal Braga's drug shipment. Dom then learns that Letty died while working for the FBI. This turning point is primarily in the protagonist's favor, but it does push them up against the ropes by blowing their cover with Braga and putting Brian in the tough sport of convincing the FBI to go along with their plan to uncover Braga himself. Dom and Brian's plans to capture Braga goes south when the FBI jumps the gun and arrested the wrong man. Dom and Brian realize that the second in command is actually Braga himself. This is not an amazing third plot point, but it does represent the loss of all character hopes. They lost Braga, they lost Dom's shot at amnesty, and they lost the killer Phoenix. Dome and Brian go to Mexico to capture Braga. Note the clear shift here thanks to the setting change. Climaxes usually work best when they are contained units in some obvious way. Setting constraints are often a great way to achieve that. Dom kills Phoenix. Dom's main goal has always been to get Letty's killer. Braga is just a bonus, so his arrest and re-arrested since he would conceivably have tried to run away again while Dom was checking Brian's phones are appropriately not the focus of the climactic moment. Dom is sentenced to life in prison, but Brian and Mia arrive to rescue him. I have mentioned several times throughout this analysis that the major structural moments are not particularly amazing or memorable examples, and they are not. But this film does work very nicely as a whole. Its strength is in the underestimate of the relationship playing out beneath the over-the-top action of the main conflicts. The structural markers are all where they need to be, and they do a good job of holding the story together, even though they are not killer in themselves. Fast and Furious 2009 movie review. Hello action fans, Slick Donjon here. We have made it to the fourth movie in the Fast and Furious franchise. This is just called Fast and Furious, not be confused with the Fast and the Furious. This film is the fourth movie, but chronically it takes place third in the series. Just a warning, this review will contain spoiler for the first three films plus this one if you want to get caught up quickly. The first film set up our character with a nearly beat for beat exact point of Point Break. The second movie veered into generic action trilogy but with plenty of fast driving, and the third film took us international while ditching the focus of the main character from the first two films. In the fourth, we have all the elements of the first film back. Paul Walker, Vin Diesel, Michelle Rodriguez, and Jordana Brewster, who all stated in the first movie, are back for this one. With all of the main star returning, a bigger budget, and more pressure than ever to make a movie people would enjoy. This was going to be a difficult feat to pull off, so did the film live up to expectations, or was this is a sequel without a point other than to make money? Let's dig in and find out. Much like the first film, the movie starts with a big action piece involving fast cars and a huge semi-truck in a Dominican Republic. The fast cars are trying to steal oil tanks right off the back of the truck. The team trying to grab the tanks, including Dom, Letty, Tigo Leo, Rico Santos, Cara, and Han Leo. The fact that Han is here signal to us that this happened before the events of Tokyo Drift. The stunt is pretty incredible, and I feel like this stunt is the first of the really large and complex stunts the movie starts trying to top every time. The robbery is successful for the most part. The driver of the truck even saves his agnoma, which I have total respect for. After the job, we find out Dom is still on the run after the events of the first film, but the law is on to him and it's time for him to split off from the group to protect his people. Han decided to go to Tokyo and Letty stays behind as Dom heads to Panama City. While there, Dom gets a call from his sister Mia telling him Letty is dead. Then we see Brian running around the streets of Los Angeles in a suit of all things. Turns out Brian has gone legit again and is working for the FBI once more. He's trying to figure out how to get to a drug dealer named Braga. And of course, the best way is to figure out what is going on in the underground race circuit. Dom goes back to LA and watches Letty's funeral from afar. He asks Mia to show him the crash site where Letty decided The Dom finds evidence of nitromethane. This leads Dom to David Park, who is the only guy in the area who sells the stuff. Meanwhile, Brian's information has turned up the same guy who he was looking for David. Brian arrives on the scene just as Dom is about to toss the dude out of the window. Brian races up to a room and finds Dom there. He keeps Dom from killing David, but Dom gets away. And your Dom is still pretty pissed that Brian was a cop the whole time. Brian takes David Park into the FBI and is able to gain entry into an illegal street race. This is an addition to be driver for Braga, the man who is looking for drivers named Common Combos, and he says he wants real drivers. They have to run a course through streets full of traffic based on GPS coordinate downloaded into their cars. It's a pretty fun race, and we all know the only person who might even have a chance of beating Dom is Brian. It gets close in the end, and Brian looks like he is going to win, but Dom knocks Brian off the road. Dom knows that one of the people driving for Braga killed Letty, and he is out for revenge, so nothing will stop him. We even see a sequence where Dom imagines the crash in his head and Letty death. Take notice on this because this will become a thing in the later movies as well. Even though Brian lost the race, he is able to have one of the other drivers arrested, so now he also gets the job. Dom meets one of Braga's top lieutenants, Gizil Jashar. She flirts with him, but Dom is clearly a one-woman man as he turns down Gizil after he basically describes Letty as his perfect woman. The job the driver are required to do is to transport a bunch of money across the border through a complicated series of underground tunnels based on GPS coordinates. The scenes look pretty good and it's a fun race in this part of the movie. Once they get to the other side, drug leader who what drug dealer do and try to kill the drivers, but Dom has a plan. He wants to see a rival driver named Phoenix die because that guy killed Letty. So Dom rides his car to explode, enabling Brian and Dom to find a way. Phoenix does life through. Somewhere in there, Dom also learns that Letty was actually working for the FBI when she died. Dom beats Brian to a pulp when he finds out, but Brian tells Dom that Lazy was only doing it to clear Dom's name. Dom feels like a jerk for that one. Once Dom and Brian get away, they stash the payload they were carrying in an impound lot that Braga owns. Braga has no idea he's got his own stash right under his nose. Brian set it up so that Braga will meet the FBI will be able to arrest the guy, and in exchange, Dom gets to go free. Things do not go as planned. Turns out Compose has Braga all along, and the FBI movie is just a little too soon and blow the arrest. Brian and Dom make it out alive, and for some reason, Brian is to blame for the mess up, even though it was someone else who made the call to move the FBI in too soon. Dom still has a vendetta against Phoenix and Brian reconnects with Mia. Brian and Dom decide to go and caught Braga, even though he is in Mexico, outside of US jurisdiction. Dom is just here to get Phoenix. Dom and Brian to capture the drug lord, but then it's a car chase back through the mountains. While the first sequence through the mountain looks pretty stylish, this return trip is kind of a confusing maze of an action sequence, and it was pretty hard to follow that was happening. In the end, Brian is almost killed by Phoenix, but Dom saves the day by hitting him with his car, and Braga goes to jail, and Dom allows himself to be captured this time. We see a court scene where Dom is sentenced to 25 years to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Despite the fact that Brian vouched for all the good Dom did, the last scene is Dom in his orange prison suit on a bus headed to jail, but as the bus goes down the highway, three high-speed cars pulled up. Brian is in one, Mia is in another, and Tigo, Leo, and Rico Santos are in the third. We don't see what happened. Then I think we call all the same Dom is about to be stormed from prison. In the beginning of the movie, start with the fantastic cast and it hints at bigger and better ones to come. Some of the more personal part of the film come through as well. We get to see Brian reconnect with Mia and you can feel how much the loss of Letty gets to Dom. The plot with the drug lord is still pretty than here, but the racing and driving is great. The chase through the caves is probably the weakest of those sequences, but it's still fun to watch. It's nice to see the core cast back here, and it's especially good to see Tom and Brian in the same movie again. This film series will still go on to a bigger, faster, and crazier start, but this is where things start to get a little flexible with physics. There are definitely times where car crash and people almost certainly should have died or been severely injured just walk away fine. It does work best if you watch this one right after the second one, but even watching it out of order is still kind of fun because you can start to figure out how the filmmaker realized they needed to retcon the timeline a bit. If you have not the scene in a while, it's still worth checking out, just don't expect the most complex plot here. The movie The Fast and the Furious 4, and it is the fourth installment into the franchise of The Fast and the Furious by Paul Walker and Dominic Toretto, Vin Diesel.